Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners Policy Session on this Wednesday, June 7, 2023. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Commissioner Savas is attending a joint advisory committee, joint policy advisory committee on transportation event, so he is not at sessions today. All other commissioners are present. Your first policy session today is review of the intergovernmental agreement, purchase and sale agreement, and temporary construction easement for the construction of the Oak Lodge Library at the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Concord property. Jeff Munns, Assistant County Counsel, will present. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Talking about this IGA for the Concord property for the Oak Lodge Library. You had previously considered this question as the Board of Directors of NCPRD on March 15th, and then it came back to you as the Board of County Commissioners on March 28th. Since that time, I've been working with staff to draft this IGA. It also references a temporary construction easement and a purchase and sale agreement. And what we've learned through this process of putting this together is that the best way to do this is with a condo plat. And so that is a purchase and sale agreement that we'll complete later after we're further into the process so we can properly survey both the building of the Oak Lodge Library as well as any grounds that are immediately around it that are sort of connected to the library so we can get the proper survey for that and complete the purchase and sale agreement. So that will follow. But this is an overview of the process. What works best for this process from reviewing this with staff is that both NCPRD and the county, through the construction of the library, need to have really full access to the grounds. And so instead of designating certain work areas and so on, it's more about carving out areas that will just allow NCPRD operations to continue, allow the county to get on the site and begin building the library. So it's a very simple agreement in essence. NCPRD grants authority to come onto the property, yet reserving some access to the parking lot for their other operations. And then also the parties will negotiate for some use of some classroom space in Concord School on the property so as not to have to bring on additional work trailers and things like this for the offices for the construction. So kind of utilize the building on site instead of bringing a lot more equipment on there because it's not a really large site, and for the large amount of construction going on, we wanted to best utilize that property. So that's the agreement in essence. Then the follow-up will be, once we have this, we're further in the process, the purchase and sale agreement and the condo plat of the space. And what's most efficient for that is essentially NCPRD will continue to own the entire land. The condo plat allows the county to purchase the space for the library building itself. It's kind of a distinction without a difference. But if the building's ever gone, you don't have a fee title to an island of property in the middle of the NCPRD property, just the building is gone. And as part of the deed for this transfer of the condo space, there will be the restrictions on it, and then the ongoing agreement with NCPRD and the county will have the restrictions on the uses of the property so that they remain consistent. So you have a library operations and you have the community center operations and the park. You don't want those uses to change in the future where we have conflicts on the property where it's not consistent and they would not work well together. So that's anticipated and outlined in this agreement just simply that they're at this point not going to claim that each of those operations are a nuisance and so they can move forward with the construction. And this agreement will then be replaced by both the purchase and sale agreement and an operations IGA, which will govern the overall use of the site once the spaces are complete, both the library and the school remodeling and the park. And so that way we'll know if there's certain areas that are exclusive use by the library, and then for the shared uses, the parking, the sidewalks, all this kind of space that are shared for both, how they would share those expenses. And that's going to be based upon both the space, the capacities of each, and then the anticipated numbers that are using those facilities. And that's something that we'll be able to adjust over the years to properly account for the costs.
Thank you, Jeffrey Mums. There's a cost of $21.5 million in this document. What does that include?
Well, that was from an earlier policy session where it laid out all of the costs for construction of the Oak Lodge Library, and I'm sorry I don't have the exact breakdown in my head. That was from the earlier policy session from a few weeks ago. But that would consist of both the retained library district funds that are allocated for the Oak Lodge Library to pay the capital cost of the construction. There was some increase in that from a previous budget, so that's the library district cost. There's county general funds in there to make up some of the costs. There's ARPA dollars, as well as some grant funds.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so have we landed on a price of the land that we're buying from NCPRD? And is that price included in the $21.5 million?
It's included in the budget, yes, and the price is at $370,000 per acre, and the library will use less than an acre. We anticipated that kind of just if it's only the footprint at the square footage of the building, somewhere around a half acre, it will likely be a little more than that because of the layout of the building, just the shape, as well as the areas like the kind of almost like a patio space in front of the library that is sort of tied into sort of indoor-outdoor space for the library. So it would be a little larger than just the footprint, but that's the estimate, and that is the price, and that's agreed to in the IGA because it's based upon the most recent appraisal.
Any questions from commissioners on this? Yes,
Chair, I have one
go
question.
ahead. Commissioner Scholl.
So this takes care of the footprint of the building. The parking dedicated to the library will continue to be on NCPRD property and maintained by NCPRD, correct?
Yes, it's on the NCPRD property because the entire land would remain NCPRD property, but it would be a shared cost. So essentially like a lease through the costs for the maintenance and the usage of those parking spaces based upon the anticipated and then actual use.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments from commissioners? There is a recommendation in the packet, and I will entertain a motion. Commissioner West.
Chair, I move that we approve the Oak Lodge Library Construction IGA.
Seconded.
Commissioner West has moved we approve the Oak Lodge Library Construction IGA, and Commissioner Scholl has seconded the motion. Any further discussion?
Build that library.
Build the library, the man says. Okay. Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much for your good work on this legal agreement.
Thank you, and we'll bring it back to you as the Board of Directors of NCPRD at a future meeting for approval with the other hat on.
Gary, do we want to do that at our next meeting this month?
Yes, you could do that at your next meeting. This still has to go to a consent agenda on a business meeting. They don't sign documents.
Right, we'll put that on there for you.
So I think we have time to do that. We can put it on the consent agenda next week's business meeting, and then still take it to the NCPRD
Yes.
board meeting.
Yep.
Okay, let's do that.
We'll submit it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Very good.
What's next?
Dan, are you ready for the next one? We're ready to move forward if you are, Chair.
Go ahead.
All right, the next policy session, annual review of solid waste collection service. We have staff from Transportation and Development, Dan Johnson and Cheryl Bell, to present. Go ahead, please.
I'm just going to turn this thing over to you.
Okay, that's fine.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. Dan Johnson, Director of Department of Transportation and Development. I am pleased to be sitting next to Cheryl Bell, who is going to take the lead in this presentation and share with you the findings of this analysis. So with that, Cheryl.
Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. So we're here to share with you the results of the annual review of our solid waste collection fees. This seems really loud today. And present the Solid Waste Commission's recommended actions on this review. Sustainability and Solid Waste Program, which is part of the Transportation and Development, is responsible for managing the county's solid waste collection system. This includes the annual review of the production companies of the 7 companies holding board-approved franchises. The purpose of the review, which is conducted with the assistance of a contracted CPA, is to ensure that solid waste collection services are provided to residents and businesses safely, cost-effectively, efficiently, and in a way that brings material out of the system and collects that. The results of the review are used to establish the fees charged for a variety of services the county requires our franchise collectors to offer and to assure a fair rate of return for our collectors. Today, we're going to be reviewing fees for the solid waste collection services offered by our franchise system and also for the Clackamas County-owned transfer station. So we'll start with the collection fees. During the annual review, franchisees submit detailed reports which are reviewed by staff and the contracted CPA. We evaluate cost and test the impact of known costs and potential fee increases or decreases on the operating margins for the service area and for the system as a whole. This review includes an assessment of appropriate operating margins. The county's practice, which is consistent with other counties throughout Oregon, is to set fees that targets a 10% margin for franchise owners with an acceptable range between 8 and 12%. So this year, the known and measurable cost increases included in our calculations are a 10.6% increase in driver labor costs, 15% increase in liability insurance, 7.5% increase for repair and maintenance to trucks and equipment. There was an increase to the Metro tip and transaction fee that is effective July 1, representing 11.4% increase in the disposal costs over the current fiscal year. Now, just a note on this one, this July increase is a departure from Metro Council's policy directive that was established in 2022, which capped these fees at 8%. Staff engaged with Metro during the fee-setting process in the forums that were available, including supporting Commissioner Scholl in his work at MPAC. In all these avenues and venues, we advocated for maintaining the policy directive of the 8%. So there are additional factors and costs anticipated in '23 that cannot be reliably estimated but do impact the operating margin. These include keeping up with disposal cost increases as they occur to avoid more significant increases later. For example, in '24, when it is expected that disposal costs will increase 8% or more. Increased costs to related implementation of food waste collection among the restaurants, coffee shops, and small businesses in the urban fee zone. And there's a number of truck replacements that were planned in '22 that didn't occur due to supply chain issues. And so those are expected to occur in 2023. Depreciation costs associated with new equipment may show up disproportionately in '23 due to the supply chain issue. So based upon these increases to in operations, if a fee increase appears warranted, to give consideration for all the costs of collection, investments in trucks and equipment, management and administrative costs, and allow a reasonable rate of return for the owners of the collection companies. The Solid Waste Commission, which is the county's formal body on participation in the solid waste system, met on May 17th and considered the annual review. The commission voted 4-0 with one abstaining to accept the review and recommend a proposed fee increase be forwarded to the board for your consideration. And this is option 2 in your packets as the Solid Waste Commission's recommendation. If the proposed fee increase is approved, the total county system estimated margin would be 9.79%, which is within the acceptable range and close to that 10% target that we aim for. Without a fee increase, the estimated 2023 margin for the entire system is 7.64%, which is below that operating range of 8 to 12%. This fee increase results in approximately 5% increase over a variety of different services offered by our franchisees, and this is attachment 1 in your packet showing the full cost of the fee increase and all those services. So this year, we also reviewed the fees for our transfer station because the county owns a transfer station just outside of Sandy on the way up 26. You see it when you're going up the mountain. We don't talk about it very often, so I have a little bit of just kind of information for you. Last year, the station handled 6,000 tons of garbage and recyclables from about 20,000 customers. Half of these customers dropped off 370 tons of recyclables. Customers also delivered 2,000 tires, 500 tons of scrap metal, 4,600 gallons of motor oil, 380 car batteries, and 40 tons of e-waste to that station. So over the years, there have been minimal fee increases for our transfer station. The last operational increase was in 2016, and then we did an adjustment in '21 to cover the cost of a new stormwater management system on the site. The increased disposal and labor costs affecting collection companies are also having an impact to the transfer station's operations. So to account for these costs, an approximately 8.3% increase to the minimum per can and per yard fees is proposed. An increase is also proposed for the handling fees for tires and refrigerant and for the per ton disposal for large loads. Table 3 in the worksheet shows these fee proposals. So this brings us for the options for the board's consideration today. Option 1 is maintaining fees at the current level until next year's review. If this is chosen, the operating margin for the entire system for 2023 would be 7.64%, which falls below that acceptable range. Option 2, approve a fee increase effective July 1, 23, as approved and recommended by the Solid Waste Commission. If this is chosen, the 2023 margin for the entire system is 9.79%, so close to that 10% target. And option 3 is proposed an alternate here in this policy session. And Solid Waste Commission is respectfully recommending option 2 today. Before we complete our presentation, I do want to recognize and honor Solid Waste Commission member and former chair of the Solid Waste Commission, Carrie Creighton. Carrie unexpectedly passed away on May 21st, right after the last meeting. Carrie was one of the first recycling educators hired by the collectors in the 80s, and she was part of the team that delivered presentations to schools and developed outreach materials for the collectors to use. She was hired by Clackamas County in the 90s as one of our first recycling coordinators. She was instrumental in creating the first curbside collection throughout the county, and for this work, they won a NACO award. She also developed the county's first policy and procedures for purchasing recycled products and creating the office recycling program. She helped bring people together to amend the ZDO to have garbage and recycling standards in the zoning and development ordinance. She joined the Solid Waste Commission in 2015 and brought her considerable knowledge to this commission. She enhanced all of our meetings and discussions, and she showed up with a smile and welcomed everybody, and she's going to be deeply missed by friends and colleagues. We wanted to take this opportunity to really recognize her for the work that she gave to the community and the county. So with that, that's our presentation. We're happy to support the board in your deliberation and answer any questions you have.
Oh, yeah, we'll have some questions for sure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
There's a lot of information in the packet. This is a very complicated procedure we go through at the county, one that, quite frankly, I don't enjoy. And I'll explain to that in a minute, but we have at least one commissioner with a light on, and then we have at least two commissioners with lights on, and then I'll follow up with my questions. Commissioner West, you're up.
To the residents that pay this fee in their utilities, do they ever see a decrease?
I believe in our history, we've done a couple of things. I don't know that we've done a decrease. We've added more services, though, for the same fee before, and we've held fees before.
Okay. I've gone through this process on a little bit smaller level. When I was a Wilsonville City Councilor, we would work with Republic Services to go through this very similar process and I've always been of the mindset that government often wants to think it knows that it needs all these additional services when a lot of people just want to be left alone and pay less. So just like as we look at this, I have a question. I didn't quite understand cost increase number 3, an increase to the Metro tip fee and transaction fee on the disposal waste effective July 1st, representing an 11.4% increase to disposal costs over the current fiscal year. The fiscal year of 2024 increase is a departure, and that word has me kind of perplexed by why it's a departure, from the fee predictability policy directive established by Metro Council in 2022 that capped it at 8%. A 3.4% increase seems noteworthy as people are about to see a lot of their costs go up due to the economic climate we're in, and people are feeling nickeled and dimed. Is Metro nickeling and diming our residents right here, and why is this increase happening?
I can start, and then Dan can jump in. So the Metro increase, we are cost receivers on this increase. The staff position that was put forward was at 8.4, and Metro Council asked staff to come back. Metro, from the deliberations that we observed through the forms that were available, Metro was supplementing the cost to keep that cap of 8%, and they chose to take all their costs into account, which brought it up to that higher level of 11%. So they chose not to do the supplementing this year.
Can you explain what the Metro tip fee is and transaction fee is?
It's the fee that our collectors pay when they bring materials to the Metro transfer station. They pick them up throughout the area, they drive the materials there, bring them there to be transferred, and then they're transferred there to the ultimate place where they're either recycled or they're taken out to a place like Arlington where they're put into a dump.
And did Metro explain why this increase was necessary?
From what we've heard, just because of their increasing costs.
Okay.
And I believe the fee stabilization, there was a lot of discussion around this last year, a lot of anxiety and angst and dialogue that occurred. Metro had proposed, and you talked about the word departure in the staff report. Pardon me. It's a departure because last year they had talked to us about we want to implement for the communities a fee stabilization methodology. So it showed a 7% fee increase last year, 8% this year, 9% next year. We still had concerns with that. And we raised those concerns with Metro last year. We raised those concerns with Metro this year. And Metro staff remained relatively close to that 8%. Again, when that discussion got brought in front of Metro Council, I believe, when they were looking at the totality of their numbers and their costs, determined they had to dip into their reserve funds to cover and to maintain, because of increasing costs, maintain that 8%. Metro councilors chose not to do that. And they then directed staff to go back and assess an additional increase. That discussion wasn't vetted. I look at Commissioner Scholl, that discussion was not vetted thoroughly through MPAC, which is kind of the forum in which historically those discussions have taken place. We were tracking it. The 11% came out at the last minute, and the Metro Council approved it. And you had the region, I think, as a whole was kind of, other jurisdictions were not in support, but were leaning and trying to sway Metro Council and staff towards the 8% as they had talked about previously. And Metro Council made the decision to implement the 11%.
That's unfortunate that that's how the process went down, but not surprised that that's how Metro decided to do their work. Typical. I guess my other question is instead of increasing fees right now on people, do we do a critical analysis of nice to have services but not necessary services that cost the fee payer money as entities like Metro go through this process and increase fees on working families?
Nice to have.
Some things that aren't mandated that
Yeah.
are nice to have within the service that we can maybe scale back because people are having to really deal with being nickeled and dimed in the county. I know it's not to many people a lot of money, but to some it is.
You do have options in choosing your service level, and I think that's where that shows up. You can choose how often you want your collection service, and then your fee would be impacted for that. Not all of our zones have yard debris included and things like that. It's an add to service, so that's where we typically see people be able to regulate what they want to use.
Are there things that are not option that could be looked at? Like, for example, I don't say we do this, let's say we allow for the picking up of fluorescent lights and having a special recycling program for fluorescent lights. I'm literally, this is hypothetical. But is it possible that we don't make that a mandatory service and it saves a program like that and it saves people money or at least keeps the rates neutral?
We have historically stuck to base level services, okay? And we are in a conversation with our haulers about what additional services or options they may want to provide or be able to provide. A great example is the discussion we had about Ridwell over the last year.
Recycle Plus.
Recycle Plus, yeah. And so the discussion was, and the direction from the board was, they came in providing an additional service to collect clamshells. And
Okay,
it's a for-profit enterprise, basically an app, like an Uber kind of thing, where you sign up and it's like, if I have clamshells, I'll come and get it. We worked collaboratively with our haulers because they wanted to keep it within their scope of services they provided. And those add-ons, those nice-to-haves like that, are optional. So that the citizen can choose to participate or not participate in that service. And if they do, they're available then to get that additional service at an additional cost that they would have to pay.
You don't see any reasonable way we could discuss to keep rates neutral?
I want to go back and I want to discuss, there's a key term in here, and it's that operating margin. It's not a profit margin, okay? I want to make sure we're clear. So it's an operating margin. And if you look on page 2 of the staff report, you'll see that 10% operating margin target. It's a top paragraph with an acceptable range to 8 to 12. That's basically dollars that we know that we set aside for those franchise haulers to cover costs from their margins. It's capital. They pay taxes. It provides them reserves for operations. Provides return to ownership in regards to how they use those dollars. That's to keep our franchise system healthy. That's kind of that guiding light that we have within the organization or within the fee. And again, we hire an independent CPA to come in and do this analysis. This is not staff. It's not Cheryl and I or Rick sitting around saying, hey, we're going to make the fee that. It's an assessment of those costs. And with those cost drivers that you saw that Cheryl talked with you that are in this report, we are always able to keep the fee neutral right now and not do an increase. But who it's going to impact is going to impact our hauler community and that operating margin that we have, because it'll lower it below that acceptable margin of 8%.
And I'll just close with this, is I'm very concerned that we are not finding a way to stay neutral. I'm also concerned with the process that Metro went through for its tip fee and transaction fee. And I'm not really concerned about the hard work of the providers, the company doing the work. I think that they are feeling the pinch in the economy. I'm concerned with the lack of public involvement, the lack of responsiveness, the lack of understanding from Metro as a partner in the region, and basically doing the Metro thing and stonewalling local entities out from having a real conversation around this. And it's just typical, like it's just not the best way to do, it's not the best practices. And I resent the fact that that's how they operated in this sense, why we're talking about having to go increase fees on working families and not keep it neutral. It's just a wrong path to do government. And I'm just tired of seeing it in Clackamas County, and I'm sure there's other jurisdictions that feel the same. Chair, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Schull.
Yeah, I understand that the Metro Council made a decision to increase the fee to 11.4%, and I don't know if they had a alternative to that. A question for you real quickly on the Sandy Transfer Station. The Sandy Transfer Station, are they responsible for trucking to Boardman, or do they transfer that from the station to Metro, from Metro to Boardman? Something I've always been curious about, but we can talk about that later. The bottom line here is, what does this fee increase do to the family garbage pickup bill? And I'm looking at your urban current fee of $30.90 for a 20-gallon single-family trash can, weekly service, right? So that $30, that's per month. $30.90, that's per month. Okay, so my bill right now is $61.80 a month, billed, excuse me, every 2 months.
Yes.
I get a bill every 2 months, $61.80. So it's going to go up to $64.
If you see attachment number 1,
Yeah.
it clearly defines the fact
Yeah.
that increase is
Yeah.
about 3.6%. And it's very challenging because there's different services that you can
sure.
do.
It
Yeah.
depends on the size of the trash can.
Correct.
And your zone,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that, I know that everything goes up. Cost of government goes up, cost of running a truck goes up, fuel goes up, pay goes up, insurance goes up. It seems to me that your attachment 1, your proposed fees are reasonable. And so, looking at your documentation here, I would support your option 2. Yeah, and I want to thank everybody involved in the Metro transfer station work, truck drivers, and our franchisees, and keeping costs down. It seems to me that one of the things that I don't get calls on in the county is our trash pickup. Okay, so.
Only when it snows and they can't get there. That's the only time.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Or if you have a short-term rental next door and they're, and they got oh well. But anyway, this seems to me that this is a reasonable increase this year. So I'll support option 2.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have two more commissioners who want to talk. Commissioner Schrader, you up.
Yeah, I just want to say the issue is we really can't directly control what Metro does. I mean, they're their own statutory body. So I would have preferred that they not, that they had capped increases at 8%. I thought that was a fairer way to go, but we can't control that. But what I see with these other cost increases, it really is a cost to the franchisees, is it not? And we all know that inflation has impacted everything across the board, including collection and including labor and so on and so forth. So I would agree with Commissioner Schull. I think, whether or not you think what Metro did was unreasonable, that's separate from the fact that the folks that are running their businesses need to keep up their operational costs and their employment for their folks that work with them. So I would be glad to support option 2 as well.
that it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have been meeting with some folks to reacquaint my ongoing education on this matter. And this is an item we deal with once a year, so we don't live and breathe it. We're tasked with having to do the dirty work. Yeah, garbage collection is dirty work, but I'm going to tell you what the dirty work is a policy setting from Metro leadership. Metro leadership, unfortunately, cannot provide enough financial responsibility and oversight to know what the heck type of money they're taking in. They're mixing their pots of money, and it comes out who knows what color. The fact that they have not had rate increases over the years finds us in this specific situation because they really do need to have a business mind running the transfer station, okay? And it's just too easy for them to willy-nilly, oh, this is my bottom line. We're going to pass it on to the rate haulers because the rate haulers will then pass it on to the people. And gee, we really don't care, so there you go. So I met with the haulers. And the haulers have real increases. 15% fuel increases, 15% liability insurance. And why the liability insurance is going up for everybody, I don't know what's going on in the insurance industry. We can start poking fingers at them too, okay? Labor costs. All of our haulers in Clackamas County are under labor negotiations starting next month. We know what that's like here. And on and on and on. The haulers that I talk to have to budget to buy a new truck every year. Those trucks cost between $350,000 and $400,000 each. And you have to continually replace your trucks every year. Some buy 2 trucks. And if they're lucky enough, they buy 3 trucks just so they can provide the service. But Metro doesn't seem to care about that. And that's the problem with the Metro regional government. They are the least removed from delivery service. They are least removed, and they don't seem to reach out and have discussions. Or they don't seem to reach out to their own transfer station arm of what they provide and try to control what's happening there. I don't know who their financial manager is, but I highly suggest that they go out and bring somebody from the private sector who's used to running the business, because Metro cannot run a business. When you talk about the increased rates to people like myself, Commissioner Scholl, you said your bill is $60 every 2 months? About that?
About that.
Well, mine's $74 every 2 months, and I'm wondering why you're getting off cheaper. You live further out.
Well, yeah, but you might be in a less dense area than mine.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be.
I'm just saying, okay, I'll pay it. I'll pay it. And if you go over the chart in here, what that boils down to our people paying for this service is $1.10 to $275 increase per month per can, depending on the size can you have, okay? Most people are going to say, yeah, I'm going to do it, but it happens every single year. And are we going to get to a point, if Metro doesn't start controlling their fees, getting their arms around their bottom line and their runaway freight train of a disaster of a business, do we come to a point in society people are going to quit paying for the garbage service? That's rhetorical. I don't expect you to answer that. This rate increase does give haulers a chance to be whole in a very competitive, highly overregulated industry that I'm going to tell you, I would never be a business owner and a hauler in a million years, and I've had many businesses where I've been the CFO. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they swallow all the regulations coming at them right and left. I don't know why anybody would be in a business when government can dictate to you what your bottom line is, and that's a disaster, a huge disaster. This will probably pass today because what choice do we have? This is why I don't like this. Every year we're called upon to do a regional government's dirty work for them. Dan, I don't like this, and this system better change.
Let
I'm going to tell you that right now, okay?
Not regional government. Sure.
You know, and I have objected to this the last time I was a commissioner. And if Metro thinks it's such a good idea to pass along an 11% increase this year, next year, the year after, because I don't see any time in the future that they're going to stop this type of increases, then you go do it yourself. I have more notes here. I have a lot of notes, as a matter of fact. Thank you for this. But we're coming to a point in society that people are going to say, enough already. And this board of electeds hears it all the time. All the time. There's no more thankless job, besides maybe garbage haulers, than these commissioners sitting right here today. Commissioner Shaw?
Yeah, being a garbage hauler is better than being a commissioner, I think.
You might have something there.
Okay. I hear a lot that some counties in the country, they're having a hard time using recycled materials and getting it wholesaled out and processed, and some of that material that's supposed to be recycled ends up going to the landfill. How are we doing in Clackamas County? Are people judicious and actively engaged in recycling their materials?
Yeah, we
And are we able in Metro to process those recycled materials and then get them processed and sold for further processing? In other words, do we have an efficiency going on there?
Yes, we do. We have a pretty integrated and robust recycling community here in the metro area.
Yeah.
The materials that are collected do have active markets. That's why you see things like clamshells not currently collected curbside and have to go to special places where individual markets are available.
Yeah, okay. And I can tell you that people out in Sandy, out in my area, they are death on recycling. They work very hard on making sure that what goes in the trash can is as little as possible. So I don't know if we have an ongoing education, public information about this, but if we do, it seems to be working well.
We do extensive work in the MyClatco publication in
Yeah,
regards
right,
to
yeah.
recycling options and opportunities.
Yeah.
I think they had three pages in the last edition.
In the next edition, we have our Trash Talk, which has a comprehensive recycling guide, and that's provided to all the MyClatco. We also have a pretty robust master recycler program, of which I am a master recycler. And we
Okay.
talk to a lot of community events and go out to events and talk to the community about how to recycle.
Yeah, okay, one more thing. In East County, we also have another way to recycle, and that happened at my house this morning when a bear got in my garbage. So, thank you.
Can to stomach. It's all good.
Commissioner West?
Do we have any mandatory services within our, within this sphere, the garbage pickup, that are driven by, I know, some political ideology around this is green, but there's no evidence-based practice or evidence-based, evidence that shows that it actually does anything to further better our environment or our local communities in that capacity? Do we have things that are like, it's more politically driven and ideologically driven that causes price to go up and we don't actually see the benefit within like our local region and it's more politically driven than it is actual evidence-based?
That's a deep question.
That causes pricing to go up higher on working families.
Let me start with the introduction you had, which was mandatory. None of this service is mandatory. You don't have to have garbage service. You don't have to have it.
You don't, but most people really are dependent.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so the discussion is, when you look at those, the services that are rendered, has there been a political interest, I think, in this region in advancing recycling more than the rest of the nation? I would, from being pretty ignorant on the topic, in all honesty, I would believe that would be the case. And And the discussion is, that's kind of the cost for the services, because we collectively are just facilitating the health of the franchise system and the ability for those individuals that are in that franchise system to be profitable and reasonable within a certain amount, and keep rates as minimal as possible as we can for our service providers. But beyond that, you go to like the tip stations and the markets that, and because we have private and public tip stations, and how those individuals are being efficient and effective in accomplishing that objective, I couldn't tell you that.
I guess I'm
couldn't speak.
concerned that if we have services that feed a bureaucrat's bloat and political ideology and regulatory kind of efforts, that actually that's quite expensive. They feel good about it in their own virtue, but it actually doesn't do anything to either provide the outcomes that they say it will within an environmental framework. So sometimes we get very ideologically driven and heavy in our regulations, and we feel politically good about it, and it's really popular in this region, but its outcomes just basically make it more expensive and miserable for everybody else, and does nothing to do what they said it was going to do. And so I'm wondering, within this service, in this realm, we see anything potentially like that should be addressed, a little sunlight to it.
Within the context of this fee-setting exercise and the services that are provided, I don't see that. Okay. But I do think there's going to be a discussion over the next. We're doing a lot of this is run through our sustainability program. We're restructuring that program right now with this focus on the solid waste component, and it's going to be a major part of their work as we work with Metro and other entities around the region as we adopt these solid waste plans, and Cheryl can probably speak more articulately to this. But I think as a part of that effort, there has to be a deeper dive into around these rate increases and the lack of stability in those rate increases and where those rate increases are going. That discussion around the rate stability discussion, if you recall, was around the necessity for those folks to have capital revenues to go out and build new facilities because they had to replace existing facilities. And so now, wait a minute. It's like you have a 7, 8, 9 based on capital. What is your capital plan? And a discussion with Metro to really do a deeper dive into that during this next year to say, what is the capital plan? What are you doing with this? Why are these dollars going up? I think you saw serious, as you all know, inflationary impacts over the last year and a half. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But this whole discussion started with, hey, we need to build a new transfer station. How are we going to do that? And then it was like, let's increase the rate by 6% or whatever it was 2 years ago. And it's like, well, wait a minute, why are you doing that? We didn't have the inflation we were seeing. And so I think there's got to be a deeper dive into those philosophical discussions that are taking place and decisions that are taking place that are impacting the rates our citizens are paying. So basically, are there other options besides building new transfer stations? Can we refurbish the existing one to reduce costs?
Yeah.
I mean, I think those are really where the work of our staff is really going to intertwine with questioning our other regional partners about why they're increasing these costs and what they're increasing the costs for.
I'm heartened to hear you say that you don't see that ideological kind of driver that's causing services that may not be needed, but they're regulatory and they're kind of bloat within the system. Like, I'm heartened that you don't necessarily see that. I just know that I was elected to be a watchdog of people's checkbooks and for working families, and so I just want to make sure that I am ideologically consistent myself as we provide oversight in this area. I am just for full disclosure, I'm totally on the struggle bus on Metro's actions regarding this and lack of transparency and collaboration. It smells a little fishy. It smells a little bit like garbage. And I'm concerned that they don't have that same value system that we're bringing here today when we're talking about people's monthly costs.
That being said, which I can understand, I think that we're not big fans of Metro or this fee increase. I mean, that's just the way it is. But I'm a pragmatist. We have to think of our franchisees, so I'm going to move that we approve the fee increases effective July 1st, 2023, as approved and recommended by the Solid Waste Commission. They are the folks that I listen to as we move ahead with this fee increase. Thank them. Thank all of you for your hard work and for being good community members. Okay.
Motion is on the table. Do I hear a second?
Seconded, and
Commissioner Schrader has made a motion to approve fee increases effective July 1st, 2023, as approved and recommended by the Solid Waste Commission. It has been seconded by Commissioner Schull. Commissioner West, do you have a comment?
Yeah, as we move into discussion, thank you, Chair. I am hard-pressed to support this motion today. I want to make sure that we get the necessary resources to the haulers and to the industry that does this work, but I am tired of being prescribed by Metro another taking of Clackamas County. It's just one after the other. And I don't like the process in which they did this. At a certain point, somebody has to just say no. And today, I'm going to be a no.
Thank you, Commissioner West. I would like to speak to this as well. As you notice, we're one commissioner down today. We need 3 votes to pass this. Normally, I would join Commissioner West in that no vote. But I don't feel that I can. I feel I have to support the haulers who are providing a service that the citizens demand. People do not want to see garbage piled up in their front yards or in their driveways. They want it taken care of and delivered, just like all the other services are provided in the county. So I feel I'm taking the vote against my own deep philosophy that government is not only out of bounds, but out of control. Metro is an agency that is out of control, and the fact they don't have transparency or collaboration is just the minor part of it. Like I say, their whole business model needs to be redone, but I'm afraid that they don't listen to us. They just don't listen. And that's a very, very sad state of affairs. Any other discussions?
Chair, I'd just like to say, you know, I appreciate our franchisees. They work hard, they do a good job. We have virtually no complaints on their service. I hope next year we can work a little bit closer with Metro when we look at any kind of increases to this. And I also want to thank our members of the Solid Waste Commission for their work and their recommendation today. Thank you.
And that goes to another point. What exactly is the role of the Solid Waste Commission? Do they, what do they do? Do they just like rubber stamp Metros and they just bring it to us? Do they try to delve into negotiations with Metro? Are they our representatives, and who do they work for?
Solid Waste Commission is a volunteer body. It's an ABC to the board. They are, their job is more on the technical side of reviewing the annual report, discussing the findings in the annual report, looking at the fee increase that's been put forward. We talked through a number of the cost increases that we presented, you know, the driver cost, insurance, and repairs and trucks like we talked to. So they do they look at more of the technical analysis and then make a recommendation to the board based off of that review. Commissioner Creighton, who passed away, you know, with her background in the solid waste system, that's the technical analysis that they bring. And we also have franchise haulers representing the industry that are part of the Solid Waste Commission. So it's a balanced board.
As a matter of fact, you sent out a survey to the haulers and asked them, didn't you? And the survey included questions on their expenses, correct? What else?
That's part of the annual fee reviews. We get information from the haulers. That's some of the data that we pull in to
What do you
use.
ask the haulers?
Let me bring up staff because I don't have
Well,
those.
costs, so basically, what are your costs? And we assess those costs, balance those costs across basically all the different entities to make sure there's a reasonableness to it. And I think the one takeaway from the one item that Cheryl shared with me with the Solid Waste Commission, and they also do it more than just a fee discussion. They helped us vet and discuss like the Ridwell dialogue. It's like, you know,
Help develop
operationally, how do you help
Recycle
develop, how do you help develop that program? But we take their data in, and it's important to have balance on that committee. So we do have hauler representation on there. We have private citizens who have an interest in recycling. It's a diverse committee with diverse interests. And like I said, we are pleased to announce they supported it 4-0, one abstention, because we don't have staff vote on fees, but basically, and there was discussion around they felt it was fair, is the word that I heard. They all felt it was fair, and the rate increases proposed.
All right, seeing no further discussion, we're going to vote on this, Tony.
Commissioner West,
No.
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 3-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary, what's next?
Next session is referring advisory question to the voters regarding repeal or reforms of Measure 110 to the November ballot. County Council staff will present. And I'm not sure who's the lead. It looks like Jeff Munns and Sean Lilligren. Go ahead, please.
Morning again, Chair, Commissioners. Here once again to talk about your advisory questions for the ballot regarding Measure 110 and changes to the criminal statutes that were modified by that measure. We had been here in April to talk about some draft questions. Oh, Mike, there we go. All right. And so I had submitted some information and then submitted a revised packet because the cost for advisory matter is significantly higher than was the estimate provided earlier. The cost we have right now is a range between $300,000 and $400,000 to put a single question on the ballot this November. Further revision to that looks like it's between $360,000 and $380,000 plus to add a single question or two questions to the ballot in this November. That analysis would be different if it was done in May of next year. I don't have those numbers to know what it would be. It's a much bigger election. The cost of sending out the ballots at that time would be higher. Clerk is here if you have any questions regarding that, but it's something that maybe is for even a separate policy session to have a better understanding of those costs for elections going forward. But the question that we had included in the packet to start the discussion was, should the Oregon legislature criminalize possession of certain hard drugs, specifically heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, methadone, and oxycodone? We received some additional questions from the chair and commissioners. Commissioner West submitted some questions yesterday, another additional one drafted by Stephen Madcore after meeting with some of your folks. And so other options would be a potential survey on some of these questions that was raised by Commissioner West along in his email as well. For reference, NCPRD was here recently after a survey on a question of governance change, just for reference as the cost. That was about $95,000 in total. They're not completed with that, but what was presented was 2 focus groups, a number of questions, and analysis. So if that helps gauge the cost of other options. What our office's role is in reviewing these questions and the process to ensure that the questions that are sent to the elections office are in the proper form, comply with the process, and that would include the 10-word summary, a 20-word question that needs to be answered either yes or no, essentially, by the voter, and then a 175-word impartial summary statement. Any elector in the county could challenge these ballot measures if they felt that they were biased or done improperly. And with that, I think we have another details survey or
I think
outreach?
Jeff
Okay.
pretty much got it all. I just noted the headlines this morning. The city of West Lynn is doing a survey for disaster management. I thought that was kind of topical since Commissioner West had that question, a concern, or a path that's viable at some point. Wanted to throw that out there. But yes, the legal world here is pretty limited to the form. Word maximum for the question, the title, the summary, that's what we're here for. And we're here especially for your questions. So with that.
Okay. Yeah, we have a couple commissioners here. This is how I would like this discussion to go today, commissioners. First, I want to review the question that we ask first, and then if we could discuss the fees, we'll have the clerk come up and discuss the fees on this, if you would please, because they're 2 separate issues. Fees will decide what action we take and when, but if we could narrow down to the question that we want to ask, and Commissioner West, you and I talked a lot about this yesterday. You sent out an email, I believe, hopefully, commissioners, you have that.
They don't.
Oh, okay, well, 2 other, well, okay.
We have the
Yes.
text right here if you'd like me to read it for you, for the
Or-
questions.
Yeah, that's fine. You could read that, or I can share mine with Commissioner Schrader.
Okay.
Just another way to look at it, and then a recommendation on the bottom that we talked about. But Jeffrey Mamas, would you like to read those two other questions?
Yes, the two questions posed by Commissioner West yesterday were number one, should legislators representing Clackamas County introduce/pass legislation repealing provisions of Measure 110 that decriminalized illegal drugs, including for juveniles? Second question, should Governor Kotek call a special legislative session to address Measure 110's drug decriminalization and its impacts on crime/homelessness?
Okay. I thought those were interesting. I'm also going to, Commissioner West, would you like to read what the bottom paragraph is and what?
Yeah.
Just an idea that you're
Yep.
putting out there.
So I think just wrapping our collective brains around what those questions to the voters would be. And I'll just go through this last paragraph in this email for the record. We may want to consider not putting it on the November ballot. It sounds pretty expensive, and there's not a lot of participation. And we might be the only ballot thing that's happening. It's not really an election cycle, so it's not top of mind, right? And so when there's nothing really going on, why would we? It's not the best use of the dollars if we have to spend to get this out there. However, the May election's a presidential primary election, so a lot more people will be engaged. Even a lot of people that traditionally may not even vote. In general, they're more engaged in a presidential race. So I think we'll get a more precise representation of voter sentiment on Measure 110. And I'm guessing it may be a different price point because there's already a ballot going out. And I'm sure that Clerk McMullen could help us understand how that works. And then I think it's important to do a soft launch. I want a really, really solid bulletproof idea about where we're at with this now that we've lived with it and the crisis that we're in. And the abject failure of not only its implementation, but its ability to meet the crisis and the cost to the livability and of people throughout our state, specifically in the metro area. And so I think maybe partnering out with some type of social media outreach, maybe some PGA gets engaged and try to get more sentiments. Maybe it's doing something similar to Parks District. I think something between now and May to get this top of mind and to push that, I think would be smart to get the best bang for our buck. And then and we need to get a sense of where people are today. 17 counties did vote to pass Measure 110. Clackamas County was one of them. I bet you the majority of those counties today have buyer's remorse. And I think that there's a lot of evidence to show that. And recent polling that's come out of Oregon that shows that the state as a whole has real bad buyer's remorse. And I think we're at a crisis and fentanyl is a game changer. And now fentanyl mixed with meth or fentanyl mixed with vet tranquilizers, and so Narcan doesn't work. It is an absolute game changer. And so I think it is an emergency worthy of a special session potentially. And I posed two questions because of this. I posed two questions because Clackamas County can't fix it. We can advocate, we can go to our voters, we can use our bully pulpit, we can get the sentiment of Clackamas County, we can bring other counties from local government on our side, we can maybe in a unified voice begin to maybe push back against the status quo and the narrative as it is today and this policy. But I posed two questions because only the legislature and the governor can do this. Only they can really fix this. We have to deal with it because we're the government closest to the people and it all rolls downhill to us. And when it hits the fan, we're on the other end of it, of a bad policy. But that's why I think that we pose the question this way, because we want to see the leaders in that body, in both the legislature and the executive branch, take actual action on this. So those are my thoughts around it, and why I think doing it in May, having kind of over the next couple months engaging with our residents on this in a meaningful way, and having that conversation in a way that, quite frankly, never got to happen during the election cycle because only one voice was heard, the Drug Policy Alliance outside of the state that was heavily funded by outside sources took over the political narrative, and frankly, the no on Measure 10 didn't have that same juice behind it, and people were sold a false bill of goods, and it was confusing. So I want us to maybe get that pendulum to swing back so that we can really have a serious community conversation around this critical crisis. So those are my thoughts on it, Chair.
Yeah. I do want to take some action today, Commissioners, so get ready. But the question that was posed to voters, and I'm going to read it verbatim, and this is why it was a bait and switch. The question for a yes vote provides, this is what it is, a yes vote will provide addiction recovery centers and services, marijuana taxes partly finance, reduces revenues for other purposes because they're taking the marijuana tax and doing exactly what was already promised, and they're using marijuana taxes for something else that the voters already said they wanted to do, by the way, and reclassifies possession of specified drugs, reduces penalties, requires audits. Well, reclassifies possession of specified drugs. Most people don't know what that even means. It decriminalizes drugs like meth and heroin and LSD and fentanyl and all of those drugs, but it doesn't say that. Okay, what voters voted for thought they were getting a recovery model, when, as a matter of fact, there is no recovery. The money that's come through, most people throw it away, don't care about it. Our district attorney has talked eloquently on this many, many times. Statistically, that we can prove that what has been promised is this Measure 110 has been such an abject failure. Not only has it been a failure, it has caused drug addiction in this state and our county to run rampant. People have lost their jobs. They've lost their families because of drug addiction, and therefore they are on the streets, creating a homeless population. Not all the homeless population is this, but has created a homeless population that now all governments are so far behind the curve on this that this issue has just gone awry, Governments can't possibly keep up right now because it went like a rocket ship. So that's why I believe that Measure 10 was passed as a ruse, made promises, basically lied to people going forward on this. I do want to take some action today, Commissioners. I do want us to land on some language, because as Commissioner West said, we could do it in May, and that will give us an opportunity to gather partners, to make our case, to go to other jurisdictions, and hopefully they can join in their local jurisdictions to do the same. And I think that's the only way that we're going to try to do this, is to gather partners and gather some steam and momentum going forward. Quite unfortunately, the Oregon legislature had many bills dropped dealing with Measure 110, and they refused to deal with it. So as our legislature is spending money like crazy for housing for people who are homeless because of drug addiction and many other things, our legislature has refused to direct their efforts at the direct cause of one of society's worst problems here in Oregon. And I feel badly for that because I used to be a legislator. I sat on the Human Services Committee back when it was every single day, and I spent on my Ways and Means Human Services all day long in these committees for 4 years during session. So I know what they're dealing with, but it's no excuse. It's just no excuse that they can't deal with this really sad problem. So maybe if we adopt question number 1, I pretty much like that, question number 1, and we can alter it, that they'll start to pay attention. Commissioner Schrader, you're up next, then Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, I'm going to have to clarify my position on this. I agree with RDA. I think Measure 110, decriminalizing was not a good idea. I also say that as the mother of a daughter who's a prosecutor who is on the line with a lot of the issues that decriminalization has done. However, I don't think a ballot measure paid for by general fund, either now or in May, is an appropriate way to go to our constituents. We can do that now as paid county commissioners with full-time jobs to go out to our community with those questions and with a survey and town halls to really get the answer to that question. I just think with a constrained general fund, 500,000? But I don't have any idea what the cost would be in
Martha,
May.
it's not 500,000.
Well, I'm getting those kinds of numbers from folks, and I just don't like doing a referral with, which I think it is a political question that we should be talking and asking our constituents. I didn't vote for Measure 110. I thought it was crazy. Now, the notion of having behavioral health folks out there to treat it was a good one. That part of it I supported. The issue is that infrastructure isn't in place right now. They don't have enough people working in the field to really look at it, I don't think, on behavioral health. And if we want to shift to treatment, I'd rather take general fund money and work on a recovery model and not use the money for a referral when we already kind of know the answer to the question with this. To me, this is a financial piece, not because I think that decriminalization is the best thing we could have done, because I believe that having that piece of it as part of a behavioral health model really kind of compels some people to get access to the drug care they need. It's illegal. When people are irrational and on drugs on the street, we all know that, look at the Oregonian article the other day. That was kind of a disaster. People who are on drugs aren't going to be rational. They're not going to be thinking clearly. They're not going to move forward with it. I don't see criminalizing it, trying to just throw people in jail. I see it as that's another contact point to get them the care and get them the help that they need. But what we have to do is work on the social service infrastructure to make sure that happens. And I think the issue is that social service infrastructure is in the works right now, but in the meantime, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and we're seeing people on the street who aren't getting the services because there's no nexus anywhere. I would strongly suggest that this not be, I disagree with this, I just do. I don't think we have to put anything on the ballot. I just think that we need to start working on a recovery center. And I think we need to show the rest of the community what we can do as a county to do it right. And I would rather see money from our general fund go to that kind of an activity than a ballot, because I already know people are disenfranchised and feeling this was a bad idea. I knew it was a bad idea from the get-go because I had experience with a person who was opioid addicted. And if I didn't get him into the criminal justice system because of that, and who stole from me, this is a personal story, to feed an addiction, if I didn't get him into that system, I don't think he ever would have gone into rehab, okay? So I'm fine with, I think, I just think this is a bad way to go about it. I think we can do the same job without a referral to the voters because we already know, and I'd rather see the money go elsewhere for treatment and recovery. That's just my opinion with this.
Thank you very much. We have two other commissioners, and then we're going to bring up the clerk to talk about the fees. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, the passage of Measure 110 turned Oregon into the wild, wild west of drug abuse. It took the ability of our law enforcement to keep our cities and our counties safe. It's reduced our public health. It's decreased our public safety. It needs to be repealed. I agree with Commissioner West that our chances of getting the state, the electorate, to support what we're trying to do here would be greater in May of next year. That gives us 11 months to do an outreach statewide to impress upon the voters the importance of repealing Measure 110, and instead of just 5 months if we're going to try to get it on the ballot by November. So we need to put a bite back into our law enforcement, and we need to do that by repealing this Measure 110. So I disagree with Commissioner Schrader. I believe that we need to criminalize possession of these drugs and at the same time work to increase our ability to help people who are addicted to drugs, have a pincer approach to this problem. So again, I like to look at putting together a public outreach program between now and next spring, when it's time to begin to look at our ballot title and file this with the clerk. Thank you.
Commissioner West.
I agree with this board and my colleague, who I have the utmost respect for, Commissioner Schrader, that this was a horrific policy that has been very difficult for local communities to live with. I disagree with her assessment that we shouldn't put it forward. We are watching people throughout the metro area slowly commit suicide on our streets. The Oregonian article was, I think it was Noel Crombie's article the other day, was chilling. In the photograph within the article, you have an officer writing a ticket to a man who has charred foil in his lap, fentanyl straws scattered about him, clearly altered state of mind, clearly unable to advocate for himself as he lives in a destructive cycle on the streets and is bound to that with no hope. He passes the man a number. He holds in the other hand, charred foil in one hand, and in the other hand, the man is holding a number that he has to just call. Right now, because of this backwards policy, hyper-politicized and wildly progressive, extreme decriminalization policy, the only of its kind in the nation, we have seen opioid fatality overdoses skyrocket. That is a direct result of bad policy. People are dead. We have 1.5 million counterfeit fentanyl pills seized last year in Portland alone. Last March, we had the largest drug bust in Clackamas County's history here in Oregon City. It is everywhere. We have begun complacent with being okay with seeing open air drug dens and open air drug usage in our communities. Paraphernalia floats in the wind, the foil like leaves in the wind, while people are dying in front of us. And that's not a crisis to take up in the Oregon legislature. Not one meaningful discussion can happen with the people that have the ability right now to save people's lives. They'll virtue signal about a whole lot of other stuff, but people right now across this country in urban areas are sentenced to death, and it's due to bad policies like Measure 110 and hyper-extreme political movements that push it. 4,000 citations. Most officers won't even write the citation. I did my ride-along. They were like, we're just going to dispose the fentanyl and take this individual where they need to go, but we can't even write it. But we wrote about 4,000 total. Less than 5 of those citations actually recalled the number. 0 evidence of anybody getting in and through treatment. It is an unmitigated disaster, and the legislature and the lack of leadership from the governor has caused us as local entities to take action. We're forced into this. I, as a nurse, am tired of seeing patients and people dying on our streets. I took an oath and I became a medical provider to care for those that especially cannot care for themselves, and we sit complacency and allow the legislature to literally do nothing. So yes, sorry I'm upset, but yes, local communities have to stand up for their neighborhoods, their schools, their parks, their law enforcement agencies, because the legislature and the governor are MIA, and stop telling us and selling us a bill of lies. It isn't working. It has failed. We must change course. So I hope to God 36 counties join with us in this effort. I think the majority will. I think a number of the 17 counties who were bamboozled into this the voters will go ahead and join us in this effort. That's why I think it's essential that we pose both questions, because those are the entities that have to fix it, and stop hollowing out our urban areas. Stop sentencing people with addiction issues to death. You pass a crazy policy like this and we have no infrastructure for recovery. We have no infrastructure to handle this. We have no way to actually induce people into treatment. We are allowing them to die. It is not our value system. And I sure as hell did not get elected to sit idly by and watch it happen. So there, I'm done. But I think we should pass today the the questions as 1 and 2, so we can ask the voters to implore the people the electeds that should be taking care of it, to actually take care of it.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader, and then Commissioner Scholl. And then, in the meantime, I want the clerk to come forward, please, if you would, and explain your fee structure.
Yeah, I just want to correct you, Commissioner Shull. I never supported decriminalizing drug use. I rarely tell people how I vote, but I saw the red flags to start with. That's not what is concerning me here. It's concerning, it's already a hyper-political environment. We know that. What I'm questioning is this the best process to get what we want? Do we really want to go to the voters? Like I said, we know the voters are having buyer's remorse. Why spend the money if we could use it for behavioral health resource networks? That's the good part. That was a Senate bill. But that's what we really need, is to shift the conversation to recovery and go out with a message as a commission that, no, this isn't working. It's obvious it's not working because people who are on drugs aren't rational, and they're not necessarily going to get help on their own because they're not able to rationalize it. One of the reasons they're on drugs is because their lives are falling apart. And I share your passion, quite frankly, with feeling that we're letting people die on the street. So why don't we go out as a commission and tell people this? Why do we have to spend money on a ballot measure? It doesn't.
Thank you, you've said that once.
I know, but
it
it seems to be more political than really getting to the nitty-gritty, I hate to say this, of how do we help people get unaddicted? And if this isn't working, what can the counties plural do at the AOC level to get together as 36 counties and come up with the solution for it, and then get it fixed at the legislature? I'm not questioning your passion, and I'm not questioning any of my colleagues. I just think this is the wrong venue to do it in. I think
Thank
we've
you.
got political clout.
Thank you, you've said that probably 10 times now.
Yes, but I want to be heard.
You are heard, Martha. We need to move on. We're running against the time on here. I always allow the commissioners to speak as much as they want. And I do have a policy of after, repeated, and repeated. It's the way it is. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, okay, Chair Smith. I'm a little bit confused as to what we want to do here today.
Well, I
Now,
can outline that.
Okay.
Just want to refer to the ballot.
I would like us to have a planned public outreach program to influence the statewide electorate, and then some 81 days before the May primary next year, do our ballot title and get that going. If we are we suggesting that perhaps we might do a SEL 805 at this time?
I don't think we need to do it at this time. It's 11 months out.
Yeah, okay.
But we can start the ball rolling in our.
Well,
I mean, I have a motion ready. when I do it.
So you're, Commissioner West, you're advocating we get the verbiage for SEL 805 now, and then use that as a basis for our outreach?
Yes.
Okay, so do we need to do that today, or can we look at your recommendation and give it a week or so to think about it?
I mean, we could. I mean, we can always come back.
Yeah.
I'm pretty clear and ready
I mean,
to make. I am going to make a motion
Yeah,
today.
now, okay, but if we were going to try to fast track this for November, that'd be one thing. But if we have 11 months, let's do that. Let's target May of next year.
And my motion will do that.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, thank you very much.
All right. I want to get this question of fees. In the staff report, the cost of this election is $300,000 to $400,000 for this one question. Is that the entire cost of the election?
Hi, thank you, Chair Smith and Commissioners. I'm Catherine McMullen. I'm your county clerk. And so we provided an estimate of $300,000 to $400,000 in April if this was going to go on this November 2023 ballot. The way we determine costs is what portion of the ballot and how many voters this would be on. So this would be a county-wide election, so it's going to be on all 309,000, so about 310,000 voters' ballots. And then if you were to share that election with another city, then you would share that cost, let's say with the city of West Linn, that's about 20,000 voters. You'd share half the cost of that 20,000 ballots with then the city of West Linn. So we're looking at, for November 2023, it being 300 to 400,000. And then this morning, we were asked for specific estimates. So for a one-measure election, we're at $360,319.89. This is assuming $1.30 per voter at this point. But we do bill actual cost, not estimates. So it could be a little bit more or a little bit less. And then for two measures, it's $384,774.32. And that's assuming that the city of West Linn, the city of Gladstone, and the city of Wilsonville either have a measure or an election. And we know both the city of West Linn and the city of Gladstone have open councilor positions. So that's for November of 2023. When we look at the May presidential primary, it's actually going to be significantly lower. That's because you're going to be sharing the cost of the election with 80 to 90 different contests or measures. And again, we won't know exactly how that's going to be, how much that's going to be until we know exactly what's on the ballot and how much that costs. So we're looking at $60,000 to $80,000 for one or two measures for the May 2024 election. So the cost would be significantly different depending on when you wanted to put this on the ballot.
So in the past, the clerk's office have paid two out of their budget for the elections. It sounds like you're shifting the cost to the county general fund. However, you have your own operating budget. It doesn't sound to me like you're willing to pay any of your own operating costs for the elections.
So we're not permitted to do that. We have to actually charge for local elections. And what we're talking about is kind of the same pot of money expressed in different ways. We are one county, and as I was here, I think it was just last week or the week before, talking about our budget and getting it approved before the budget committee, this would then determine how much we're charging each of the local jurisdictions. So we would be charging Clackamas County one amount, West Linn, Wilsonville, Gladstone, different amounts based on their share of the election. Now, how we chose to make that right or pay for it or not pay for it would something that we would be handling internally with the county. But it would be an expense that we would be spending on this election. It would be the actual cost of providing these advisory measures to the voters.
Okay, Gary,
and that's really what we're talking about.
Thank you very much. Gary,
Thank you.
I have a policy question for you.
Yes.
This sounds like it's a policy shift from past clerks going back way before the last clerk. Is that true?
As my time as administrator, yes, I believe prior clerks may have done things a little differently, but the clerk is an independently elected official. She has the right to run her office as she sees fit. You also approve budgets for departments. Catherine has a deficit already. She explained that to you all when she met with you last time, because her entire budget is based on recording fees. So she's already at a struggle with how to fund her office operations. So we can do whatever you direct me to, commissioners, as the governing body, and certainly Catherine's input as the independently elected clerk, how to fund this or any other future election.
Of course, we don't know if anybody is going to put something on the ballot this November besides,
So the city of West Linn and the city of Gladstone.
Let me finish.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking.
No.
I misunderstood
finish,
your direction.
Yes, you've said that already, twice. I heard you. So besides those two other entities and us, there could be some other coming on the ballot, but we don't know that yet. Okay, there's still people probably making up their minds. I suspect if they're listening to this conversation and they have to bear the brunt of their own election, they probably won't do it. And you know, that's really sad in a way, because doesn't that go to democracy and our electorate being involved in the process? So what I see here is a shift to only presidential election years where people can even afford to be heard on the ballot. And I think that's very sad, Gary. I'm not sure what the policy needs to be on that, but I think it's a very sad state of affairs. For instance, we approved the city of Canby to offer to their people a change in their boundary on their parks district. They have no money. They have absolutely no money to pay $60,000, $80,000, $100,000. They can't even afford $10,000. So I suppose, you know, you're a democracy and you're a representative government, as long as you have the money to do it. Is that what we're telling people? My question is not rhetorical.
Oh, that's a loaded question, Chair.
It is-
Come
it is.
on. It's a loaded question.
Of
Let's
course
not.
it's a loaded question, and I
Please,
do
my
think
my
it's...
friend, let's not go
And
down this road.
please don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you, even though we disagreed on this particular one.
I know.
Please, okay? We will disagree on this and we will be fine. So I do think that's a question that bears asking. I mean, are all jurisdictions looking at that? So I want to thank you for coming forward and presenting your information to us, Clerk McMullen.
Yeah, thank you. I wish you the best in your decision-making.
You bet, yep. Okay, Commissioner West.
Chair, I move that we approve two 20-word questions to pose to the voters. Question number one, should legislators representing Clackamas County pass legislation repealing provisions of Measure 110 that decriminalize illegal drugs, including for juveniles? Question number two, should Governor Kotek call a special legislative session to address the Measure 110's drug decriminalization and its impacts on crime / homelessness for the May 2024 election, while also directing staff to look into surveys and outreaches to the local community between now and the May 2024 elections, and direct our staff to work with us to reach out to the other counties to potentially pose this question to their voters also.
Commissioner Scholl, do you have a comment? Well, okay, first there's a motion on the table. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. The motion has been made by Commissioner West, and I am not going to repeat it. Tony, do you have it fairly clear? I know it's recorded.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, and it has been seconded by Commissioner Scholl. You have a comment, Commissioner Scholl?
I was just going to say that in the coming months, as we begin to work on this motion, the board can look at it and maybe wordsmith it a little bit, but this is a start, okay?
Commissioner West?
Yeah, there is more work to do on this. For example, each would have 175 summary underneath each question, right? So that's not worked out yet. These are just, here's the questions we're proposing. Maybe they even get tweaked at another amendment moving forward, but this gets the ball rolling in our plan, and it starts to signal to our residents that we're very serious about having a loud voice on this issue. And we're using, our best efforts to try to address a really chronic and persistent problem. So that's why I worded the measure the way I did. And I am really heartened that we heard that it could be significantly less money as we thought in a May election. And by the way, I know it's expensive, tens of millions of dollars have been spent on this really bad policy that it cost a lot of lives and a lot of heartache and a lot of social strife. So this is a drop in the bucket to the pain we're all feeling.
Thank you. I am mindful of the cost. I don't like costs like this. I do think it bears a larger policy question. The cost of democracy is afforded by those who can pay. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Yeah, I'm going to be a no vote on this, not because I disagree with the philosophy of decriminalizing drugs. I just think there is another way to do this that will not cost us $300,000 to $500,000. And I think we can do the same work through the Association of Oregon Counties and calling together our legislators. I think that we already know what the public thinks about Measure 10, and I think that this is just frankly, I don't think it's a good idea to use general fund money to ask a question that we already politically know the answer to. That's why I'm going to vote no with this, okay? Now, I'm more than willing to work on recovery centers and educating people and giving my opinion about Measure 110. And I think that's our job, and I don't think we need this venue to do it. I think we should be doing it anyway, and it would not cost us money. That money, as I said, I'm sorry I keep repeating myself, is going to be much better well spent. I would rather put it towards a recovery center directly here in this county than put anything on the ballot, because that's just the way it is. So I'm a no vote on this.
Commissioner West?
I just, I think we all had a little heartburn on the initial price tag. I am once again heartened that it won't be anywhere near that due to the report just given to Clerk McMullen. I think it is a good effort to try to do the best we can to change the narrative and the reality of bad policy that we're all living with. I also think that we can do both. And I don't think this will prohibit us from doing recovery-oriented systems of care, recovery centers, and big, bold things in that realm, as we have to do these things because of the predicament we've been put in. So, I love you, Commissioner Schrader,
I love you
and
too, and it's fine.
we have much agreement on this issue.
We do.
I just do disagree with you on this opportunity.
Well, it's not solving the problem. It's exacerbating it. It's going to get people upset, riled up, instead of us actually, what is the pragmatic solution to recovery?
Commissioner Schrader, with all due respect, the majority in the legislature and the governor should not put us in this position and turn a blind eye and show no deference to it.
Yes, and that's why we should go to them. It's okay.
Yeah.
Let's just vote and be done.
Commissioner Scholl?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that Commissioner West's motion lights a fuse and gets the wheels turning and brings awareness to this problem. So full speed ahead, Commissioner West.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say in closing, Clackamas County is wholly engaged on the recovery center model and not so much as the housing first model. And I personally have been criticized for that because we're not paying attention to the core root of the problem. I believe this will go after the core root of the problem. If we need to massage the language, Commissioner Scholl, going forward, I think that's an excellent idea. I like it. I appreciate what everybody has said today. I appreciate my colleague over here on my left because she does represent probably a certain sector of a population that thinks that way. I also think that if we don't stop the decriminalization of drugs, it doesn't matter how much money we throw at recovery centers, we will never, ever, ever catch up on this. And so I think we're going to go ahead and vote on this. Thank you very much, Tony. There's been a motion and a second. Would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
No?
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 3-1. Thank you, colleagues, for all your work today on all of these policy sessions. We did some very heavy lifting. We also have an employees luncheon at noon, and I hope you all can attend that. Recognition for a lot of our wonderful employees out there. Seeing no further business, Gary,
Correct.
we are adjourned.